One thing we've really enjoyed about moving to the country and living out here in Piney Grove full time is being able to give the attention to the garden that it needs. So this is our third year of doing a garden, and we've learned a lot in 2 years. We learned how to keep the weeds down by planting in landscaping cloth. We cover in between those rows with wood chips, and the wood chips not only suppress the weeds, they lock in moisture in the soil, and they also enhance the soil, or they will in the future when those chips break down. So over here on this side of the garden is our melon patch. We have watermelons and cantaloupe. Had a real good year with them last year. We found last year that we planted too many tomatoes, so we planted less tomatoes this year. Got a few starting to ripen. Got some okra. We got some zucchini squash that's right at the end of its growing life. We got some cucumbers here, some peppers, some noodle beans, some green beans, some onions, and some beets and radishes and carrots. So we've got a well-rounded menu out here in the garden, but a garden favorite for most people is sweet corn, and I want to talk about the big mistake we made in the way we planted it. So a common saying for sweet corn is knee-high by the 4th of July, and you can see that our corn is much taller than knee-high, and we are only the 4th of June. And these empty holes here in the landscaping cloth are actually corn that we've already harvested, and we've cut down the stalks and put them in a pile there to start to decompose. But last year we planted one line of corn here, and we got some decent corn out of it. But this year we noticed that our corn ears were not fully filled out, and we were wondering why, because we have better nutrition in our garden now. We have a better watering system, and we just felt like our corn should be better than it was last year, but it wasn't. And we're gonna pick an ear and show you what we mean by we're not getting the corn that we want out of this garden, and what we can do and what you guys can do to get better sweet corn. So normally I pick sweet corn when the silk starts to dry. I like my sweet corn a little young. I don't like it when it has big overgrown kernels. I like it to be a little crunchy. When you go to pick your corn, you should be able to like squeeze it and feel that the ear is filled out. And I have a feeling, based on what our crop has looked like this year and what I feel inside of this cob here, that this ear of corn is not fully filled out, and it's not. So have you ever wondered why, if you've grown sweet corn or you've opened up some corn that you bought from the supermarket, why these are not filled out? Well, that's what today's video is about, and what I learned about corn and how I'm going to fix it for the rest of this season and also for next year. So the big mistake with corn is planting it in rows. That was the #1 pitfall for why this ear looks like that. I guess it all starts with the birds and the bees, because it takes a male and a female portion of the corn here to produce a full ear. So your male portion comes up here in the tassel, and then your female portion is the silk. And if you didn't know, every one of these pieces of silk is connected to a kernel of corn. I grew up on a farm. We grew corn. We ate sweet corn so much. My dad would like to have it as a meal. So Mom would cook up several dozen ears of corn, and we would eat corn for dinner, corn and cucumber salad. So we'd have cucumber salad and corn. That would be our meal, not because we didn't have any meat or protein, but because that's how much my dad loved corn. And we would go through sticks of butter and probably a pound of salt. Me and Deb looked it up because she's on keto, and this is 40 grams of carbs. Well, this one may not be because it's not filled in, but they said an ear of corn, it was 40 grams of carbs. I not only worked on my parents' 200-acre farm, I also worked for local farmers growing up. After school, during the summers, I was just always out with agriculture, and I just never gave it any thought. I just hopped on the tractor and did what I was supposed to do. But the problem with planting in rows is that the only way for this pollination method to work is these little pieces fall off of the tassel and then land on the silk, and one of these little pieces has to hit every one of those silks. And if the wind is blowing that way, which would be from the east, it's going to blow it over there on the beans, and you're not going to get that pollination falling straight down onto the silk. So if I had rows of corn, the east wind would blow the pieces off the tassel over here, and it would pollinate these. And that's called cross-pollination. And that's how, if you had white corn over here and yellow corn over here, if the white corn came over here and pollinated the yellow corn, you would get a multicolored piece of corn. But what you're supposed to do is plant corn in blocks. So here's a tassel that has all of the male pollen off of it. And this is the one we picked the ear from. And you can see that the silk is dried up on this one, but this ear is probably even less formed than the one that we had. This one, the silk is still a little bit sticky and it's ready to receive pollen. And you see that there's quite a bit of the male pollen on there. And I'll tell you how it got there, because it didn't get there naturally. We planted our corn in 3 different stages because we don't eat a lot of it. And so we only wanted like 6 or 8 ears to come due, and then a couple weeks later, 6 or 8 ears to come due, just so we get a taste of corn, but we didn't want to get overwhelmed by it. So all of these were planted at different times, and this was my latest planting of corn, and it still has the male pollen up on the tassel, and it still is going into the initial stages of silk on the ear. So right now we have a good breeze, and you see all of that male pollen, and it takes one of them to come down here to that silk, and every one of those silks right there leads to a kernel of corn. So I need every one of them to hit one of those sticky silks in order to make a kernel. The problem is the wind is blowing from here over to here, and let's see if any pollen has fallen off at all. You can see a couple pieces of pollen on that leaf right there. There's one piece and one piece. So those two probably aren't going to make it down to the silk here. And that's why it's so important for cross-pollination, because if that falls straight down, it's going to hit a lot of leaves before it can reach the silk. And I think you're starting to see why it's important not to plant corn in rows, because right now I got an east wind. Tomorrow I may have a north wind and it blows it over here on top of the okra. So what I want is whatever needs to be pollinated to be real close in proximity to the stalk that is producing the pollen. So that's the natural way that corn pollinates. But let me show you a way that you can pollinate corn if you've made the mistake like me, and just doing that, some of the pollens fell off and went by me. But you can take this right here. So this pollen is not quite dried enough and ready to start falling in mass and in huge quantities. So when you take it and rub it against the sticky silk of the female flower of the corn, it'll actually pull it off. So this silk is real sticky. I just take this and just rub it in there, and these little pieces of male pollen will fall off and they'll stay right there in the silk. And that's how you can manually pollinate your corn when you haven't planted it properly. Now, lots of pollen on that, and just rub it here on the silk, and hopefully you're getting one-to-one contact on that silk and leaving that male pollen behind and kind of helping nature out. Came out here a week or so ago and did this, and I don't know if I was too late, but let's see if this ear is any better. So far that one looks really, really good. There's a few kernels that did not fill out, but to me this is a perfect ear of corn as far as picking it before it gets overgrown. And this, I think, is a good example of manual pollination, because I did pollinate this a week or so ago versus that other one, which I didn't. I just didn't realize that you could do that. Guys, I think this is a great example of improved pollination. Not perfect, because we still have some missing kernels right here, but compared to this one, you can see we got a lot of missing kernels, and this one's a little bit older. You can see the kernels are a little bit bigger, a little more wide and starting to dry out, and these are round just like I like them. But that's the difference. That's how important it is that you plant your corn in such a way that it can self-pollinate. I'm really happy with that experiment and glad I could show it with you in real time, because that literally just happened a week or so ago, and I did the whole rest of this row. So I'm glad I'm going to be getting some ears of corn that are more full, and I'm going to be diligent and manually pollinate these as well. But let's face it, who's got time to do what I just did to a whole row of corn, especially if you're someone that like cans it or freezes it and you've got a lot more than we have here. But for the future, what are we going to do out here at Piney Grove? Well, this row spacing is too wide for corn. the cross-pollination won't work. Even if I had a row of corn there and a row of corn here, and they were both planted on the same day and they're the same variety and letting the wind pollinate, it would need an east-west wind. That wouldn't be real good to have them 6 feet apart. So what I'll need to do for corn is put another row in between here or over here and have them about 32 inches apart or so, and then plant them in blocks. If I had 4 rows here, then the first 6 plants of corn, so that would give me, say, 4 times 6 is 24. These 24 would be in a bunch and they would be in a block. So you want to plant your corn in blocks, and then no matter which way the wind blows, it can get cross-pollination north, south, east, west, and also when it falls straight down. So that's what you need to do to fix it long term in your garden, is create blocks of corn, and then also step your corn plantings so that that matures, and then a few weeks later you get some more new fresh corn in another block, and then some more fresh corn in another block. So that's the long-term solution, but that's the way I understand to get great corn yields and good pollination. As you can see here, I haven't done bad by doing it wrong. We're still getting good corn to eat. If there's other things that you know, how to get rid of bugs organically, how to grow corn better, how to grow tomatoes better, anything you see wrong with our garden here, leave a comment down below, because it not only will help us out and give us things to think about, but it'll also help out other people that are watching our channel that are looking for advice on their garden. But that's going to wrap it up. So until next time, y'all take care out there, and remember, life's short. Grow your corn in blocks, and check out these 2 videos right here. They're totally awesome.